Hey everyone! Welcome to part 1 of my Unreal Engine VR hand tutorial series. In this video, I will be showing you how to add custom hand models to the VR pawn in Unreal 5. We will also be creating an animation blueprint and setting up basic gesture animations similar to the ones you see in Oculus Home on PC. Then we will set up a simple object grab for when you pick up objects in the level, which we will replace with a procedural grip code in part 3 of the series. Let's get started. The first thing that you need to do is follow the link in my description to Patreon, where you can download the hand mesh, animations, and weapon meshes I created for this tutorial. These assets are 100% free and you do not need to be a patron to download them. Patreon just makes it easy for me to share files with you. Once you have downloaded the files, unzip them into an appropriate location on your hard drive. Then we need to open up Unreal Engine. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using UE5, but you are welcome to do this in 4.27, as I have verified that it works on that version too. We want to create a new VR project, and make sure that you leave starter content unchecked if you plan on packaging this product to the Quest. Then just set a file name and open that bad boy up. Once you have that project open, we're going to want to navigate to the upper left-hand side of the editor and click Edit, then Project Settings, and then click on All Settings and type in RHI Graphics. This will pull up the target RHI setting. I'm going to recommend that you change this from DirectX 12 to DirectX 11. If you don't, you might experience crashes every time you open up the material editor, which we will need for this tutorial. Once you have done that, you'll need to restart, so go ahead and do that. Once you have restarted your Unreal editor, we can import the hand file and its textures. Just navigate to where you unzipped the hand tutorial assets folder and open up the hand model folder. Now grab the QK custom hand FBX file and the textures directly below it. Drag those into your project browser. After the mesh and textures are imported, we now want to drag all of the animation files in as well. We did this after so we could set the animations to use the same skeleton as the QK custom hand mesh. Select all of the animation files and bring them into Unreal. When you do, you should see a pop-up menu asking you to specify how you want to import the animation files. It is super important that you first set import mesh to false. That way we are only importing the animations. Next, we need to set the skeleton to the mannequin hand right skeleton, and after that you can just press import all. After the animations have imported, you can make sure they did so correctly by opening one of them up. Just double click on one and you should see the hand in a static pose depending on the name of the animation you opened. Now we want to create a new material. To do this, we want to right click in any empty space in the content browser and then select the material option. Name this one M_hand. Now we can open it up and assign the textures to their proper spots on the material. Grab the textures from the content browser and then drag them on top of the material so you can put them inside the material editor. The base color goes to base color, normal to normal, and the AO, roughness, and metallic are channel packed. So drag the red output into ambient occlusion, the green into roughness, and finally the blue into metallic. Now apply and save the material and then open up the hand mesh. In the upper left-hand corner of the screen, set the hand material to be the one we just created. Now our hand mesh is ready to go. The next thing we need to do is add input mappings for our thumbs up animation. In the main project browser, go to Edit, Project Settings, and then open it up. We then need to scroll down to Inputs and add new action mappings for the right and left hand. And this is where you can see the grip buttons and trigger buttons and all of the functionality that is currently inside of the default template. To add our own, we're going to want to click the plus icon, and this will add a new action mapping. For this first one, we can title it Right Thumb Anim. Then we want to add another one and call it Left Thumb Anim. For the thumb animations, we're going to use touch inputs, meaning that the thumb will animate into the position depending whether or not your real-life thumb is resting on top of the two face buttons of the controller. So for Right Thumb Anim, we want to assign the Oculus Touch Right B and A Touch. Make sure you select Touch instead of Press, because we want the user to be able to simply rest their hands on top of the controller to trigger the thumb animations. For the Left Thumb Anim, we want to assign the Oculus Touch Left Y and X Touch. When you are done, it should look like this. Feel free to pause if that was too fast. Now let's add our hand meshes to the VR pawn. Locate and open up the VR pawn. You can find it inside Content, VR Template, Blueprints. Once you have the VRPON open, navigate to the viewport, and in the upper left-hand corner we want to locate the Components tab. The first thing we want to do is grab the HMD static mesh component and turn it invisible. This will keep it out of the way for adding our meshes in. From there we are looking for our right and left motion controller components. These are what we will be attaching our hand assets to. Let's start with the right hand. Click on the right motion controller component and then click Add Component. Type in skeletal mesh and add it. Now we can navigate over to the right hand side of the screen, and under mesh we want to set it to the QK custom hand mesh. We will need to set the mesh location and rotation so it better lines up with where the user's hands will be in real life. And the simplest way to do this is to just copy the values I have on screen right now. Just copy the location, rotation, and scale, and then compile. After which we can test the project and see that our hand mesh is now visible and following the right motion controller. We then follow the same steps for the left hand. Select the motion controller left component, add another skeletal mesh, and then grab the QK custom hand mesh again. This one will require us to input slightly different location and rotation values, and you can see those on screen right now. Feel free to pause the video and input them at your leisure. We will also need to flip the left hand mesh on the Y-axis. To do this, go to Scale on the Y-axis and change the value from 1.05 to -1.05. Now compile and save again. Let's test it, and you'll be able to see that you now have two hands. The last thing that we need to do in this step is turn off the default motion controller meshes so they aren't layered on top of our hands. To do this, simply select the motion controller left and right inside the VRPON. Then, on the right hand side, scroll down to the Visualization tab and check Display Device Model to False. Now when we test it out, those pesky controller models will be out of our way. Now that we have hands instead of motion controllers, we can start adding the functionality for basic hand gesture animations. To create our animation blueprint, navigate to the skeletal mesh in your project. For me, it is located inside the animation folder that I created. Locate the QK custom hand mesh and right-click on it. Now go to the very top of the context menu where it says Create and hover over it. Select the animation blueprint option. Name this BP Hand Anim. Once that is created, go ahead and open it up. Just leave that tab open and navigate back to the main project viewport. We are now going to create some enumerators. This will drive how our animations function and define the poses we can activate within our hand animation blueprint. To create an enum, simply right-click inside the content browser, and in the context menu, scroll down to where it says Blueprints. Select Enumeration. Now name this first one Enum Hand Anim, and then open it up. Once inside, you will see an empty enumerator because we need to add our specific hand poses into it. To do this, look at the top of the enum where it says Add Enumerator and click New. Do this 5 times in total, and we want to name them in order. Start with Open, then Grip, then Pointing, then Thumbs Up, and finally Object Hold. When you are finished, your enum should look like this. Once you have your hand enum set up, go ahead and save it, and then we want to close it. We're going to create another. Right-click in the content browser, scroll down to Blueprints, and select enum again. Call this one enum_object_type, then open it up. For this one, we're going to create 5 more enumerators. Name them in order. Knife hold, then gun hold, then basic left, and finally none. When you are finished, it should look like this. Once you have finished inputting your enumerators, save it up and then close it. Now we can go back to our BP hand anim and set up our state machine. Inside the animation blueprint on the lower left, create a new variable. You can do so by clicking the little plus icon on the right of the word variable. This first one will be our hand animation enum. Click on the variable and look in the upper right hand corner. We want to set our variable type to our hand animation enum. So click on the drop down under variable type and then just search enum_hand anim. Then change the variable name to hand state. Now compile the blueprint. Next, right-click on the hand state variable that we just created and duplicate it. We are now going to add our object type enum as well. In the upper right-hand corner, click the variable type dropdown and add our object enum as well. You can do this by typing into the search bar enum_object type. Then change the variable name to object type and then compile. Now that we have our variables, we can create a state machine. Navigate to the left-hand side of the animation blueprint and open up the animation graph. You will see a node called output pose. Drag off of its result and create a new animation state machine. Call it hand animations. This is where we will create all of the animation logic in the next 3 tutorials as well as this one. Open up the state machine by double-clicking on it. We are now going to create new animation states for open, grip, pointing, thumbs up, and object hold hand states. To begin, drag off the entry node and add a new state. Name this one open and then double-click to open it up. We are now going to set the proper animation pose for this specific hand state. To do this, go to the lower right-hand corner of the screen and click on the Asset Browser tab. Here we want to locate anim_qk_open and drag it onto the animation graph. Then just connect it up to the result of the output animation pose. That is all we need to do in here. Navigate to the top of the animation graph and click on Hand Animations. This will bring you back to our main animation state machine. Now, click and drag off of the open state and add a new state. Title this one Grip and double-click to open it up. Now navigate back over to the Asset Browser and locate anim_qk_grip, just like we did for open. Drag it out and connect it up to the output animation pose. Then go back to the hand animation state machine. We are now going to set up our transition rules. This is how the animation graph can decide what hand state to put the hand mesh into depending on the value we set within the hand state enum. Since we drag directly to the grip state from the open state, we automatically have a blank transition rule ready to be assigned. Open it up by double-clicking on it and navigate to the left-hand side where we have our hand state enum variable. Click on the variable and drag it onto the animation graph. Select the get option in order to create a variable getter node. Now drag out from the getter node and type ==. From here we want to select =enum, and then we want to set its value to grip. Then connect that bool from the =enum to the can_enter transition node. We will now set up our transition rule for moving from the grip state back to the open state. Select the hand state getter and the =enum and copy them by drag selecting over the top of them and pressing Ctrl+C. And then go back to the hand animation state machine. Now drag from the grip state back to the open state and it will create a new blank transition rule. Open that up and paste the code we copied from the last transition rule by pressing Ctrl+V. Then, set the hand state from grip to open, and connect that up to the result. Now we need to do the same thing for pointing and thumbs up. Go back to the hand animation state machine and drag off the grip to add a new state. Call this one thumbs up and open it up. Go to the Asset Browser and find anim_qk_thumbs up and connect it to the output animation pose. Then go back to the state machine and open up the transition rule from the grip state to the thumbs up state, and paste in the hand state getter and == node. Change it from grip to thumbs up. Then plug it into the result node. Now go back to the state machine and drag from the thumbs up state back to the grip state and open up the new transition rule. Copy and paste that same code as we did before, except set this one back to grip. Now we are going to create the pointer state, and please pay attention to my instructions because it may get a little complicated. Drag off of the thumbs up state and add a new state. Name this one pointing and open it up. Go over to the Asset Browser like before and find anim_qk pointing. Now just plug it in like the others. Then we go back to the state machine to define the transition rules. From thumbs up to pointer, set the hand state to pointing. And from pointing to thumbs up, set the hand state to thumbs up. Now drag from pointing back to grip and open up the transition rule. Copy and paste the same nodes as before and set this one to grip. And then go back to the state machine. Drag from the grip state back to the pointing state and open it up. Set this one to pointing. Drag from open to pointing and set the transition to pointing. Then drag from pointing back to open and set the transition rule to open. Finally, drag from open to thumbs up and set it to thumbs up. And then drag back from thumbs up to open, setting the transition rule to open. This is the basic animation setup for gestures. Just so we can get it out of the way, let's make our final animation state. Drag off of open one last time and add a new state. Call this one object state. Open it up and connect up animation_qk_grip for now. We will be replacing this with our hand poses and procedural grip animations later, but for this tutorial, we will leave it as the standard grip animation. Go back to the state machine and open up the empty transition rule. Copy and paste our hand state getter code from before and set it to object hold. Then go back to the state machine and drag out from our new object hold state back to the open state. Open up the transition rule and copy paste the same code as before, setting it to open. And that is all we need to do inside the hand animation state machine for this tutorial. Just compile and save the BP. Now that we have set up our state machine inside the animation blueprint, we need to add the required functionality for actually changing our animations inside the VR pawn. Go back to the VR pawn and navigate to the viewport. We need to set our hand meshes to use our new animation blueprint. Let's start with the left hand. Click on the left hand component and then navigate over to the right hand side of the screen. Set the animation mode to use animation blueprint and then set the animation class to your BP_hand_anim. Then do the same thing for the right hand. Now we need to set this animation blueprint inside the pawn so we can call references to it. Navigate to the event graph and scroll all the way to the top to find the event begin play node. Now give yourself some room to add our new function. Start by dragging out a get node for our left hand mesh. To do this, just click on the left hand component and drag it onto the event graph. Now drag out from that get node and type get animation instance. From that node we want to drag out and cast to our BP hand anim. Now we want to connect that up to the event begin play node. Right-click on the as BP hand anim on our cast node. Select promote to variable and it will set a new variable for our BP hand anim. Rename this variable to left hand anim, and then, so we can keep all of our variables organized, go down to the category and type hand animations. Now in the variables tab on the lower left, you will see a new category called hand animations, where our left hand animation variable is. Now we do the exact same thing but for our right hand. Drag out a fresh reference to our right hand mesh. Then, just like before, we get its animation instance and then cast to the BP hand anim. Connect the left hand setter to our new cast node, and from the as BP hand anim, right click and promote to variable. Call this one right hand anim. Then go down to the category and set it to our hand animations category by clicking on the little arrow and selecting it. Now plug our right hand setter back into the set tracking origin branch. Otherwise your head will be on the floor when you try to test your VR scene. Now click and drag around the nodes you just created and press C to create a comment. Title it VR hand animation setup in case you need to find it later. Now we need to create a few booleans so that the animation blueprint can determine which hand animation state to set the hand into when we press specific buttons on our motion controller. Go down to the lower right hand of the VR pawn blueprint and create a new variable. Make sure it's a boolean variable. Name this one right grip anim. Make sure you set its category to our hand animations. Then just duplicate it. Title this next one right point anim, and it will already be set to the proper category. Now duplicate it again and name this one right thumb anim. Now repeat this last step for the left hand, so create 3 more boolean variables: left grip anim, left point anim, and left thumb anim. Let's plug those into the proper input mappings inside the event graph. We're going to start with the thumbs. Scroll down to the bottom of the blueprint right below where the main menu left and right input events are. We're going to create new input actions for the thumb animation input mappings based off of the ones we created at the beginning of the tutorial. Let's start with the right one. Right-click on the graph and type input action right thumb anim. Drag out our right thumb animation boolean variable and select the set option. Run the press execution pin of the input action into the setter node, and then set it to true. Then copy and paste the boolean setter directly below it and connect it up to the release pin, and then set this one to false. Now below it, right-click again and get the left thumb input action. Then grab the left thumb anim boolean. Copy the code we just did except with the left hand. When you are done, it should look like this. Select the nodes and create another comment and label this one thumb animation inputs. Now scroll up in the event graph to our input action trigger events. For the input action trigger left, drag out 2 boolean setter variables for our left point anim. For pressed, set it to true, and for released, set it to false. Then make sure to connect them through to the get nodes, otherwise your trigger input actions will lose functionality. Now do the same thing on the input action trigger write node, except use the write point anim boolean. When you are done, it should look like this. Finally, we can scroll up to our grab input actions. Let's start with the left hand. From input action grab left, create 2 setters for our left grip animation boolean variable. From pressed, set it to true, and from released, set it to false, then connect it through to the rest of the function. Otherwise, you will no longer be able to pick anything up. Do the same for input action grab right, but use the right hand grip boolean instead. When you are finished, it should look like this. Once all of our booleans are set up, we can go back to the BP hand anim and create the final functionality for our gesture animations. Let's wrap this up. Navigate back to the BP hand anim and open up the event graph. Locate the event blueprint update animation and drag out from the execution pin and cast to the VR pawn. In order for this to work, drag out from the object ref on the cast node and type get player pawn. Now drag from the cast VR pawn and create a sequence node. We are going to do this one hand at a time, starting with the left. From the cast node, pull out from as VR pawn and get a reference to held component left. Now from held component left, get a reference to the isHeld boolean. I haven't mentioned it yet because this is a default BP in this template. Once you have created that, go back to the VR pawn cast node and drag out from the as VR pawn node. Get a reference to the grip anim boolean and do the same for the left point and left thumb. Finally, create a reference to the left hand animation variable. When you are done, it should look like this. Now drag out from the then 0 node on the sequence and create an isValid node. Drag out from the held component left and plug it into the input object on the isValid node. From the isValid pin, we want to create a new branch and connect it to the isHeld boolean on the condition. Now drag out from our left hand animation getter and type handState. This will create an enum_handState animation set node. Set its value to object hold and connect it up to the true pin of the branch we just created. From the false pin of the branch node, we want to create another branch node. Then we want to connect the isValid node up to it from the isNotValid pin. If you ever need to give yourself a little more room with your nodes, you can double click on the lines and create a reroute node. This will help you keep your code clean. For this branch condition, we want to connect up our left grip animation boolean, and then we want to drag off of the blue reroute on our left hand anim ref and create another handState set node. We will then leave this one at its default value, which is open. Double click on that blue line again to create another reroute, and move it down. Then connect the false pin from the branch node up to it. From the true pin of that branch node, drag out and create another branch. We then want to connect up the left point anim getter to the condition of this branch. Drag out from the blue line again and create another handState setter. Connect the false pin of the branch node to it and set its value to pointing. Drag out from the true pin of this branch and, you guessed it, create another branch. Now connect up our left thumb animation boolean to it. Drag off from our little blue line again and create a handState setter node. Set this one to thumbs up, then double click right behind it and move it down. Drag off of that blue line again to create our final handState setter. Set this one's value to grip. Move those up and set the grip to the true pin of our branch node, and for the thumbs up, connect the false pin. We have just created a series of checks for the hand mesh to determine which hand pose to set on the state machine, depending on whether you are grabbing an object or pressing specific buttons on the controller to set a hand pose. We still need to set this up for the right hand, so zoom out and select all of the code we just created and copy it with Ctrl+C. Pan down on the graph below our sequence node and paste the code with Ctrl+V. Now connect the then 1 pin of our sequence node up to our duplicated isValid node, and then we can replace our left-handed references with our right-handed ones. To speed this up, click on the lines coming from the booleans and object references and create some reroute nodes. Then drag them up to the boolean variables. This will make it so we don't need to reconnect them up to the branches again. Now drag off the asVR pawn on the cast node and let's replace our references one by one. Start with our right thumb anim boolean. And then we want to replace the right point anim, and after that, the right grip anim. Then we can get new references to our right hand anim and replace the left. Finally, we need to delete the held left component and replace it with the held right component getter. Then connect that up to the isHeld boolean. Now we can compile and save the blueprint and give it a test. You should now be able to point, give a thumbs up, make a grip animation, and even grab objects with a basic grab animation. We will replace this with the procedural grip code in part 3. If by any chance you find that your thumb animations aren't working, save all and then close Unreal 5, then open it back up and test it again. It should fix itself. And this is a bug I have ran into specifically in Unreal 5. That's all for this tutorial. In the next one, I will be covering adding item-specific grip poses and editing the grab component to accept them. I will also be teaching you how to add sockets for specific objects to the hand mesh. You will find a link to it right here. If you have been following my channel for a while, you have probably noticed that this is my first tutorial that I have made using Unreal 5. I'll be honest, I haven't really noticed a difference besides the change in appearance, and a few extra bugs here and there. I am really excited to keep working on this series, and I want to give an extra special thanks to my patrons. You guys make all the late nights and hours spent debugging my code worth it. I'll see you in the next one.